welcome to our seminar. It is 3:30 on Saturday, so we have all put ourselves through a wonderful ringer, an amazing ringer. Every year, Tales of the Cocktail becomes just bigger and crazier and so much to see and do. So hopefully you guys have all had a chance to enjoy. My name is Andy Seymour. I will be, I have the distinct pleasure and privilege of being your host today for a seminar that I think is as relevant now as it's ever been. The idea of hospitality is what we're going to dig into. Apparently there's 3 phases, according to this slide right over here. So we're going to cover all of them, obviously. And maybe even 4 or 5 others that fit into it. Obviously, the 3 phases comes from 3 of the most fantastic bartenders that we have on this planet. 3 of my good friends, who I'll introduce for you now. In no particular order, starting from my left. If you've had a chance to find yourself in the Bay Area, the East Bay specifically, you may have been to an amazing bar called Prize Fighter. Hold on a second. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell. Prize Fighter, which is an amazing place based on a lot of great concepts. Jon Santer is the owner of that bar. The bar is actually up for Best American Cocktail Bar tonight at the Tales of the Cocktail Spirited Awards. And Jon has a long and illustrious history in our industry, doing many things. Actually started his first job in hospitality was actually working the door at a place, if I'm not mistaken, bouncing, which actually we could talk about how that relates to the overall idea of hospitality. But he was one of the founders of the great Bourbon and Branch in San Francisco, and is, as you'll find, is the kind of the running theme of what's going on here, is someone who cares very deeply about how you feel when you're in his space. So let's give it up real quickly for Mr. Jon Santer. To my immediate left here is a gentleman who has also spent his entire life in this industry, like his father and his grandfather before him. He is a bartender through and through. He cares very deeply about what goes on in those places and has seen it from a lot of different aspects, many different types of bars. A couple years back, he opened a truly wonderful cocktail bar in Denver, Colorado, called Williams & Graham, which just randomly happens to be up for Best American Cocktail Bar tonight, too. So yes, congrats. He's a gentleman who's been one of the true trailblazers, not just overall in our industry, but specifically in the great area in and around Denver, Colorado, and the Rocky Mountain region that surrounds it. He has helped to really drive what is a fantastic cocktail culture in that region. So let's give it up officially for Mr. Sean Kenyon. And the gentleman to my right is a spectacular, wonderful human being. He opened a bar in the East Village called Pouring Ribbons, which apparently one guy likes, right over here. No, it wasn't a shameless attempt. It was a bad joke. I apologize to all of you, and especially to you. Joaquin, stop laughing. He was I didn't mention that Sean's the reigning American Cocktail Bartender of the Year. 2 years ago, when Joaquin was still important, he was the Tales of the Cocktail Best American Bartender for 2012. His bar, Pouring Ribbons, is spectacular to me because it definitely incorporates all the aspects of what we're going to talk about today, which is the idea of the fact that when you sit down at that bar, especially if you are lucky enough to sit in front of Joaquin, you feel like you're the only guest that matters, or at least that every single guest matters, and you feel like you're the most special of those guests. So it's an honor and a privilege to have with us Mr. Joaquin Simo. So I'm going to hand it off to Jon in just a minute, who's going to talk about the idea of how we sort of set up our bar, how we think about the blank room that is going to become our bar, and all the different things that can happen from that process moving forward to the guest walking in and how that can mean. But I guess just to maybe set the tone here, I'd like to do a couple of things. I'd like to first give a quick thank you to our sponsor, which is Bar Smarts, which I am happy to be a partner in that great program. Has anybody taken Bar Smarts in the room? Oh, yeah. You guys are the best. Give yourselves a hand. Apparently apparently we don't really like ourselves that much. Bar Smarts is a great program, which obviously is something that continues this journey. Like we're doing here today, we're trying to learn more. Bar Smarts is a program that was the collaboration between Pernod Ricard and Beverage Alcohol Resource to essentially help to provide a standard of classification for those of us who really want to take this seriously, not take ourselves seriously, but take our job seriously. So we thank Bar Smarts and Pernod Ricard. We'll have a couple of great Pernod Ricard-based products in cocktails that are coming your way in just a minute. So I'd like to thank our sponsors. Let's give it up real quickly for Pernod Ricard and Bar Smarts. And I guess as we think about this idea of hospitality, as we get into this, I guess in some ways feels like it's become almost a little bit of a buzzword lately. Like, well, it's almost one of these things we know we have to talk about. Oh, I'm in the hospitality business. I give great hospitality. I'll tell you all about the things that I'm doing and make sure it's all about me, but I'm giving you great hospitality. Wait, that's not how that works. So, what is hospitality? What does it mean? It means a lot of different things. When I came up in this business working in a lot of places that had nothing to do with cocktails. They had to do with moving quickly, with taking care of people, with making sure that from the moment people stepped up to your bar to the time that they left later in that evening, that they were enjoying themselves. And it takes a lot of different forms. It takes the heart and the soul. It takes the thought process. It takes the execution. It's not enough to just want to do it well. You have to be able to both plan and think about how you're going to do it well. And then honestly, sometimes the hardest part is actually getting the final execution done. We all go through a lot of challenges, and in any given night, the hospitality business, especially working behind a bar, is grueling. We beat the hell out of ourselves on a nightly basis. We don't necessarily do this business to get rich, but we find a lot of things about the rest of the industry that feeds that. And to me, that's where hospitality comes from. Hospitality is about the soul that you bring to the service on a nightly basis. It's your ability to take who you are and what you do, which is not going to be the same for me as it will for Sean, as it will for John, or Joaquin. It's nice to have you here too. It's going to take the form that you give it. It's going to take the heart and soul that you give it. And thinking about the ways that we impact the guest, not just in giving them a great cocktail. Giving people a great cocktail should be the cost of doing business, I believe. I really think that while a totally separate seminar could be about the fact is, are we actually serving good drinks to people enough? That's a separate seminar, because maybe we're not. But that's not this seminar. The idea is you better be able to serve a great drink. And to me, you better be able to do it quickly. You better be able to do it with a smile on your face, and it better be something that lets me know that I am a guest. As the same way I'd want to be a guest in your home, I'm a guest in your bar. I don't want to hear about the things that you've, the crappy day that you had, or all the things that you bring to the table, that all of us bring to the table, which should be left at the door. So how do we understand the idea of what it means to be hospitable? And I guess to the point we're going to get into now, how do we set ourselves up to the point where we create both a space and a mentality and then a culture that drives all those things? So I think without further ado, I'd love to hand the mic or turn the platform over to Jon Santer, who's going to walk us through this idea of how do we think about this idea of hospitality from a nuts and bolts operation standpoint, getting into the idea of where it all looks from the first time you walk into your bar or the place that will become your bar and say, yes, this is it. This is the one. Everything about this space is right. I can afford the lease. It has the outdoor patio that I'm looking for, and it's got enough of the interior workings that I can go do what I want to do here. What's the next step? How do we get to that point? So, John, why don't you take us from that point, everybody? Jon Santer. Oh, and Jon Santer.
Hey.
And in the meantime, you're getting a lovely cocktail, which is the Blackberry Sage Smash, designed and cultivated by young Sean here. It's a delicious whiskey of some variety. It's Knob Creek whiskey, delicious Knob Creek whiskey, muddled lemon, blackberry, and sage, and just a touch of sweet to balance it out. Please enjoy as you will. And once again, Mr. Jon Santer.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me in the back? Everybody? That's all good? Great. Prize Fighter is about a quarter the size of this room that we're in. And when we took it over, within one day, it was just piles of dirt and holes in the ground, right? So we really had a clean slate to work with, which is a luxury that I enjoyed. What we didn't have was unlimited funds or a lot of time, so we kind of hedged it that way. But I started to think a lot about coffee, actually, at the time, which is a weird thing to say, but let me explain. The cocktail thing and the coffee thing have both happened pretty much at the same time to the same people. The same people who buy coffee for $4 a day now are the people in your bar who buy cocktails for $12. So you have the same people who are essentially taking place or taking part in the same action. They're walking into a new space. They're going up some kind of counter. They're ordering a bespoke drink from somebody behind this counter who has special equipment to make it for them. And then they're charging them for said drink, and they're going away. And you're all thinking, yeah, but that's idiotic, right? Because people don't treat coffee the same way as they treat cocktails, which is 100% true. However, I think coffee can teach us a couple of things. The first thing it'll teach us is that people are happy to wait a little while for a drink, because they do it every day already. So they're okay with that. They just quietly stand there in line. Like, if you spent your whole life in bars like I did, that's bizarre when you first see that. People just, can I have the next slide? People just doing this. Yeah, what are you guys doing? So we have the same people doing the same behavior, yet, the same people doing the same action, yet their behavior is crazy divergent, opposite. So I was trying to figure out, why is that? And there are probably a lot of reasons for that, but the one that I focused on was that coffee houses are orderly. Everybody knows what's happening. There's a solid line, and you know that if you just stay in that line, you can estimate the amount of time it's going to take you to get to the front of it. You're fine with that. Bars are chaos, right? They're loud. There's no way. There's some tricks to getting a drink, or to wave down the bartender, but never wave down the bartender. You know what I mean? Like, it's chaos. So everything that we did from that point forward, I was just trying to make the chaos a lot more manageable for you when you walk into the space. So these are all just tricks or things that I thought about while doing that. And the first thing that I thought about was Sean Kenyon, sunflower, no, symmetry. We're hardwired for it. It makes us feel good. Things that are symmetrical, please. Another thing that's symmetrical. And another thing that's symmetrical. And this is the bar. And this is an interesting photo for two reasons. So as you can see, the beer's in the middle and the booze is on the side. There are 4 rows on each side. But the other part I love about this picture, this is taken out of staff training, and actually there's a wall right behind me, so I can't get a wider shot than that, but it actually goes pretty wide. I don't have the fisheye to do it. But the ladder is my favorite part of this photo because it really bothers you, right? It bothers me when I see the photo because it breaks up the symmetry. It's like if you have your shirt in the wrong button and you meet somebody and their shirt's buttoned wrong and you're like, I need to fix that. Please make that better. So just to make you feel at home, we put everything, or as much as we could, we made it all, so if you looked at it, it would be symmetrical. Also, we use a lot of green in the bar, which I don't really have pictures of, because green is a color that soothes you internally, like looking at a green field. The next slide, please. This is the most exciting slide of the seminar.
Light switches.
Like I said, it's not a very big space, yet we have all of these light switches to really fine-tune the lighting, because I think people don't pay attention to this enough. I often go to bars that are either too dark or too bright, and you want people to be able to read your menu and see their drink, but you want everybody to look fantastic, right? So you want to be able to adjust all these tiny spaces accordingly in your bar. So we spend a lot of money on light switches and sound design. That's also a very exciting slide. Maybe that's the more exciting one. That's a gray sound panel on a gray ceiling, but just to eat sound so that you could talk to the person next to you and not just yell at the person next to you. So a lot of time and money went into sound design and lighting. and thinking about the thing you're going to stare at. We actually had a very long conversation / argument about the shelving of the bar and what it would look like, because the contractor wanted to put a facing on it, a faux facing, and it's live. What do they call that? They call that live edge. It's black walnut with a live edge, but it's real and it's actually that thick. And he wanted to make it fake, and we had this argument where I said, like, people are going to sit here and stare at it, and they're going to know it's fake. So we can't make it fake. You've got to spend the money on the stuff that people can touch and clearly see, I think. Anyway, give me 2 more, please. Oh yeah, this is my favorite slide that I stole from a TED Talk. This is a graphic of how we, as humans, perceive the world. And as you can see, no pun intended, we mostly perceive it with our eyes. Sight is huge. And then there's the things you can touch. So I had a good friend in this business once tell me that the reason he went $2 million over budget on his restaurant, because he just wouldn't want anybody to touch anything that sucks, which is a really good reason. But maybe not $2 million worth of reason. But down there, in the very right-hand corner, this is very interesting for us at Tales of the Cocktail, is taste. So while like Andy said, your drink should be great. The default position of your drinks is greatness. Work on that. But what people are actually experiencing, that's last. Everything else comes first. So, give me the next one. These are outlets beneath the bar. We opened up 4 years ago. I know these aren't such a unique. Sean just upped me, and he told me he has USB outlets at his new bar. So he's fancy like that. But I put these there not because I was really concerned that your phone was dying. I put these there. These are the underbar with the hooks. Because I wanted you to know that I anticipated your needs, and you now feel like this guy anticipates my needs. I feel better here. It's that kind of thing. And it's not that I want to make everybody happy. Like the 10 guys who carved their name in my mirror, fuck those guys. But I want everybody to feel like I'm making them happy. Previous to me catching them doing that. So outlets to make you feel better. And then this is kind of a tricky thing. Everybody knows what these bottles are. The vast majority of my bar looks like this. I have 700 choices. You're staring at a giant wall of booze. It's deep and it's tall, and most of the stuff on that wall, you don't know what it is. You guys know what it is, but nobody else knows what it is, right? So I know that can be overwhelming, and that can kind of take you back into that chaotic state. Like, I'm in this really busy place, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know what anything is, so where do I go from here? So I put these up there so that even if you don't know a lot about booze, you can see these products and know that these products are high-quality products. So therefore, maybe the rest of the stuff I don't know what that is are also high-quality products. I'm hoping people will make that connection. Fingers crossed. It seems to have worked so far. And then the next one. These are our beers. The taps are upside down in order to put they're iced and upside down so that the pints can stack behind them for space reasons. But we didn't put tap handles on there because, and I firmly believe this, tap handles were a great idea in 1982 when there were 5 beers, and one had a red handle, and one had a gold handle, and one had a black handle. And all of you out there who are as old as I am know what those 3 beers are, just top of your head, just colors. But now that there are 50,000 beers, tap handles are a terrible idea. I really think that. Because you walk into a bar and you're like, what's the one with the monkey on the rocket? Can I have that one? No. So
take a tall, cool monkey rocket, please.
You guys want one? 2? Can I get 2? Clearly an easy font. Again, everything is even and divided just to kind of calm you down. We put an axe over it for a little scariness. No, for Carrie Nation. Good old Carrie Nation. But yeah, so I'm a big believer in making everything as clean as you can. Because again, people are going to sit there and stare at it. So you have to you have to hedge against the chaos constantly. That's all I'm thinking about, really, when designing this stuff. So, back to the menu. Oh, I brought menus that I was going to pass around. But if you want to see them, come up. These are our older menus. Anyway, this kind of looks like chaos because it's the front and back of one piece of paper. But the menu is we spend a lot of time and effort putting this thing together. And like in that slide, it looks like it's unmanageable, but it's really much more. It's at the bottom of my bag, Sean. Can you my bag, please? Thank you. Sorry. So we chunked things on the menu. This idea of chunking is the next slide. The reason your phone number does not look like this, but looks like this, is because you can remember this because you've divided it up. But if everybody's looking like that, nobody would be able to remember. Not that anybody remembers phone numbers anymore. It's a bad idea. But, you know, your credit card number, your REI number, whatever it is. So on the menu, each thing is divided into categories, and each category only has 9 items in it. Some things you'll notice, this is on the first page, by the way, is cocktails and then beer and then wine, because cocktails and beer are really secretly friends and can live together in harmony. I believe that too. Anyway.
No.
Yes. Yes, Andy. You'll notice I don't brand the menu because I just don't want to get into that game. I keep the descriptions really short so you can just kind of understand what's happening. I don't think people need all of the information about the drinks. They just need to know what's going on. I also put the slutty vodka drink first, always, because the person who wants that drink doesn't want to read your menu. So the first thing that person sees is that drink, and they're like, great, off to the races. The person who does not want that drink possibly wants to read your menu and will just get by it in half a second. So it's a win-win, I think, rather than hiding the vodka drink.
Was that a slutty vodka drink?
Yeah, as slutty as possible, hopefully.
Just checking.
Yes. So it's cocktails and then beer and then wine and then also holistically, as far as your mise goes in the bar, you need things to share ingredients because you don't want your bartenders to have to move that much. You want them to move, but not move a great deal. So, and you only, I'm about medium size, so people are only about this big. So this is all the stuff they can reach. So a lot of the drinks will share ingredients like, you know, lime and lemon, et cetera, et cetera. I just think with hundreds of ingredients now, you either have to rebottle everything all the time or it makes it more difficult. So that's the other reason for all that stuff. We also line priced everything to give people kind of get their heads around it faster. Because when you hand somebody your menu, if they say, like, can I see a menu, what they're really saying is, I don't know what I want, please help me. They're not saying, please give me your magnum opus on cocktails and cocktail culture. They're just saying, like, God, because you're in the same room as somebody, right? But when you're behind the bar and it's busy and you've been there for 5 hours already and you're firing on all cylinders and you're doing math and you're facilitating, you're paying attention to who everybody is and what everybody wants all at the same time, you are really on it. And that person who just walks into that space is in a totally different space than you. So you have to be able to try to anticipate their needs in the easiest and fastest way possible, which is why it's a one-page menu, front and back. It's the opener of a conversation. It's not the closer. That's the way I feel about it. It's not, I'm going to show you everything I know right now. I'm just going to help you out of this bind you're in as fast as I can, and then we'll move on from there, hopefully.
Yeah, and not to jump in on you, Johnny, but I think the idea of line pricing is worth a second point in that you don't ever want people to make a decision based on price. I mean, you've set up your menu because it's all the things that you want it to be. It's balanced out. It's got different flavors. It's got different ingredients, and they're all incorporated. And honestly, knowing a little bit about how people's decisions work, something as silly as a drink being $1 more could be the deterrent that stops them from ordering that drink. Now, probably not for most people, but it can be that simple. And to your point of eliminating the chaos, make it as simple as possible for people. That should certainly be one of the goals that we have both in our spaces and on our menus.
I personally, I mean, at Williams Graham, we have a line price menu, and I think that too many bar owners look at, they look at their menu as, everything's got to be this cost. and it's got to be this percentage. So I'm going to have drinks that range all the way from $10 to $15. And if you engineer your menu correctly, a single price it's easier for the guest. And I think when we talk about hospitality, it's not only being friendly, but it's making things accessible and having empathy for your guest, and you make them not have to think about price when you throw just one out there. And the vodka drink, I think, is a big thing, and Jon talks about it a little bit. You need to have that entryway, that gateway for people that don't drink cocktails very often. A lot of people, like Jon said, they see vodka and that's what they're going to order, and they're not going to read the rest of your menu. But like the cocktail bars that I go to, that everything is dark and stirred, and there's no recognizable ingredients. There's no hospitality in that. Your bartenders might be the most hospitable bartenders in the world, but your menu is difficult because they don't recognize everything. You have to think of your menu having hospitality to it as well.
So I think this is my last slide.
This is your last slide.
All right, that's my last slide. Thank you all for coming to this. By the way, every time we give one of these, somebody inevitably will come up to me afterwards and say, like, thank you for speaking. I own 19 restaurants in the greater Dallas. And I'm like, wow. Thanks
Dallas.
for coming to listen to me speak. So I don't feel like these are the only ideas, but I do feel like these ideas have worked for me. So I wanted to share them with you guys. But thank you again.
Jon Santer. So kind of thinking of this in a holistic fashion and to put some fine points on some of the things Johnny just said, it's definitely about all the different ways we can manage that experience from an experiential standpoint, from the time people walk in. There are a lot of opportunities. I've worked in many places, and I used to kind of laugh when I was a young bartender at the manager, general manager, owner, whoever it was, who would come in right before you opened and make a big deal about, put the lights up, put the music up, take the lights down, this, that, the other. And again, truthfully, most of these guys were douchebags, but their douchebaggery was not based in no basis. That's not English, but they had a.
That is no English.
That is no English, people. Don't do it. Don't you do it. It was based on that simple premise of I want people to feel comfortable when they get here. And understanding that, especially, I worked in a lot of clubs where, the closest thing to a cocktail we made was vodka cranberry. The idea was that when people walked into that space, especially the first people that walked into that space, were going to walk into a fairly cold room that was really built to be packed with people. So at that first moment especially, so important to create an experience that is based on the idea of every part of it being welcoming in whatever it was. And yes, lights down, music up is kind of a classic, you're an idiot, we'll wait till you go and we'll fix it. But thanks, Toots, for making it happen. Eliminate as many points of discomfort, I guess, is the point the overarching point of everything Johnny said, and I think he states it so well. And again, get to prize fighter, and you feel that instantly. So the next step is now we've got guests in our space, and as I mentioned earlier, there's never a place where I feel more welcomed as a guest than I do when I'm sitting at Joaquin's bar. So he's going to talk a little bit about how we create that experience for our guests. They're sitting at our bar. What happens now? How do we get to them to that place where they know that they are so important that they can't help but come back, because that feeling is something that we all want. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joaquin Simo.
Thank you, guys. Can everyone hear me in the back? Is that all good? Yeah? Okay. Well, the first thing I'm going to lead with is something I always say, and it generally gets me a really, really big round of applause when I'm in one of two cities, and it does so for a very, very easy reason. What I say is when people ask me, so how did you get into this business? You know, how did you really get started in all of this? And the way I always break it down in the simplest way is I say, I learned how to bartend in Boston, and I learned how to make drinks in New York City. And that to me is extraordinarily simple, but also incredibly honest. Okay, this is as true a statement as I can make, because I did not learn anything about making fancy drinks in Boston, but I learned how to bartend, and there's a huge difference. Okay, and where did I learn how to bartend? Well, I learned how to bartend before I got behind the bar. Okay, when Andy said, well, you know, Johnny Santer started off as a bouncer, I mean, if you've ever seen Johnny, you're like, yeah, I totally buy that. He's freaking ripped, right? But I spent 2 years at the door, which is a lot harder to believe.
In red pants.
It was the red pants that scared everybody.
But I spent 2 years at the door in a busy college bar that had 250 people going through it and a line of 50 to 75 people waiting to get in pretty much on all the busy nights. It was a busy, crazy, chaotic environment, and it was in Boston where people like to drink and they like to fight, not necessarily in that order. And there was a lot of, you know, there's a lot of college kids. There'd be a lot of people would come in and work on the cruise lines over the summer, and they would just come in and get bombed. And there was always, you know, there were problems, right? And so I was a really good regular at this bar, and I would go in and I learned how to do like the breakdown before I ever started working there. 2 years at the door, 2 years bar backing. There was very little upward mobility at this bar. The bartenders were making money hand over fist. No one was going anywhere. Like, they were all college kids, and they were all just making so much money. They all graduated, and they're like, yeah, I'm just going to keep bartending. So no one went anywhere. So it took me 4 years to finally crack getting, you know, really, truly behind the bar there. But the lesson there was invaluable, because what I learned from these guys, what I learned from watching some of these guys who'd been bartending 10 years, 15, 20 years, big dudes like Sean Gavin and Seamus, you know, like guys who are, you know, they could probably make you a Manhattan, you know, if you spotted them the whiskey and the vermouth, you know, you'd pray they found the bitters. But these guys were bartenders, right? These were guys who could tell a joke, who could, you know, keep 3 different conversations going, know that that guy was about to walk out on his tab and that guy walked into the ladies' room. Like, they can see the entire place, right? So what do I run into now that I'm an operator, is you hire someone or you see someone who says, oh, I've been bar backing for 6 months. I'm ready to bartend now. It's like, oh, no. Oh, no, you're not. And they're like, no, but I make the best daiquiri. You're like, good. Congratulations. You make rum, lime, and sugar. Tastes good. That doesn't mean you are ready to bartend, okay? Because bartending is really about bartending is about the guest. It's not about the drink. And Jim Meehan put it really well when he said that mixologists serve drinks and bartenders serve guests. Okay, and that's something that I really believe in. And when you put someone who can make a great daiquiri but has no idea how to interact with a guest, you're doing a massive disservice to both the guest and to that person. You're not putting them in a situation where they are going to thrive. So when people say, why do you want me to keep bar backing? I've already done this for 6 months. I know how to like harvest the ice and prep this and do that. Well, the reason you bar back is not for the rote menial work that you're doing. You bar back so you can witness how the more experienced bartenders who are around you are handling difficult situations. And no one teaches you how to do this. You just have to watch and learn, right? So how do you cut someone off? If you've only ever had your nose in a cocktail book and someone's on their like 3rd zombie and they just ordered a Manhattan, and like, how do you cut that guest off? How do you cut a guest off so that they shake your hand when you do it? I've had that happen. I've had guests who came back the next day to shake my hand again. And I had guests who came back the following year to shake my hand one more time for having cut them off a year ago in such a way that allowed them to preserve their honor. Okay, how do you do that? Well, you learn how to do that by watching experienced bartenders. You learn how to, and we've all had the guests, right? The ones that are like the second, like, oh, this is your menu. And and they're just like eating each other's faces. Like, we've all had these guests, right? Like, it's awful. Like, they don't care. Your bar is basically foreplay. This is all they want from you, right? And that's basically where we're at with this, right? How do you put an end to some of these amorous actions if they're visibly making everyone around the bar kind of uncomfortable, you know? If you're rounding third at the bar, you know, like, maybe take it down a notch, right? But you've got to do it in such a way that they don't feel bad about it, right? So how do you do that? Well, you know, for everything that Dave Wondrich has written, he hasn't written about that, right? So you can't learn that in a book. I don't care. You've got to be able to witness these things, right? So that is, to me, an incredible part about hospitality is what these apprentice positions, working the door, working as a bar back, working as a busboy, that's what you learn. You really learn how to tend bar by witnessing all of these things. And I think that is something that just, as so much care and so much effort has gone into what's happening on a drink rail, I think people have really lost their focus a bit, and we're thinking too much about what's on that drink rail and not the person who's receiving it. And so that's really, I think, wildly important. So I always tell young bartenders, especially the ones who have only worked in craft cocktail bars, go work at a pub. You know, I don't open a better bottle of Coors Light than Andy. I really don't. You know, I don't pour.
The best Coors Light.
I crush a Coors Light. Crush that. Fuck you.
Hospitality.
I'll let some things go.
But I don't. I really, seriously don't, as Andy will readily attest. But what I do is that I know that John drinks Coors Light, and when I see John crossing the street, that bottle of Coors Light is sitting there opened on a napkin waiting for him. Before he walks through the door, his drink is ready to go. That's why that guy's coming back. It's not because I open a better Coors Light, it's because I know when to open and for whom to open that Coors Light. That's what you learn when no one is going to your bar for anything fancy. If you can have regulars when you're working at a pub, that's because you know how to bartend. Okay, that's not because you're doing anything fancy. No one's going there because you pour a better shot of Jameson. Maybe a bigger one, but not necessarily a better one, right? So that's what you got to learn. If you want to learn really high-level service, go work in fine dining. You know, I've never worked in fine dining, and I sit at restaurants with guys like Leo Robachek and John Gertzen, and I just watch as they are analyzing 176 different service points that are going on. You're just like, oh, how do you guys keep track of all this? This is amazing, right? Like, this is so phenomenal. They really have thought it out to that extent, and fine dining will give you that sort of thing. It's not just about the craft cocktail bars. The other thing that kind of bums me out is when people who identify as bartenders kind of don't understand what a bartender is in the greater scheme of things, okay? Because a bartender, if you want to think about it as an umbrella term, let's really clarify what the umbrella is. It is not bartending, and then you have like mixology, and you have setup, and you've got hospitality, and you've got this. That is not the way it goes. The umbrella is hospitality. The umbrella is customer service. We happen to bartend, okay? We could work at the Gap, we could work in tech support for an ISP, we could work at a local parish, we could do all of those things, and that is customer service, and bartending is simply customer service. The reason I bring up that we're under that umbrella is because service is never optional, okay? We work in that, we are a facet of it. We don't just decide, oh, I guess I'll do customer service today. Oh, I'll do the mixology today, you know, that'll be nice. Like, no. You always have to do the service because that's the industry we're in. We're in service. So I think that is that's an important realization that when you walk in and you realize my job is to serve, then that puts you in a very different mindset. You are there to take care of these guests, and you should derive immense satisfaction. So when we have our guests who are coming in, and, you know, like Johnny showed his menu, and I've got mine there as well. We graphed it all out. We just basically said, you know, if it's up near the top of that prior one, then it's, you know, light and refreshing. And if it's down near the bottom, it's going to be pretty boozy. If it's over to the left, where it says comforting, those are going to be ingredients or flavors you probably already know. If it's over to the right, man, we're throwing some weird shit in that glass. So, you know, bottom right is what you have in front of you right now. Okay, the drink that we just passed out is called the Key Party, and it is with, yeah.
Joaquin, what's a key party? Can you explain that to us, please?
Did you ever read The Ice Storm? Yeah, you should read that. So this is a gin drink with Bonal, which is a Gentian and a Quinquina, because, we know what that is, but no one knows what either of those things are. So the fact that it's two is, and then you have an Amaro in there, and then you have green chartreuse in there. No one knows what the hell that is. So, you literally have like 200 ingredients in this drink. This is definitely a bottom right corner kind of drink. And so if a guest wants the weird boozy stuff, they know exactly where to go. And the reason we map that out is because the bar I attended at before for 5.5 years was Death and Company. And we used to hand people, at 65, 80, 85 drink menu. And it was just a list of ingredients. And people had no idea what we were putting in front of them. They would just stare so blankly at these pages. And they're like, oh, this is pretty. Okay, I don't know what any of this is. And so when I opened my own bar, it was like, first of all, I had to shrink the menu. This is with 30 drinks. I've taken it down to 20 because after 2.5 years, I got tired of people saying, this is really overwhelming. I'm like, God, it's just 30 drinks. I didn't think that was that much. And, I've taken it down to 20, and I think for the fall, we may even bring it down to 15 or 20 just because of the response we've been getting from guests as the menu shrinks. It's just easier for them. And the staff, frankly, is pretty excited about the mise en place being easier. So we've got this little guy that kind of helps our way through it. And then those same things are actually on the menu itself. So if you forgot which one it was, or if you just skipped over and you thought, oh, look, what a pretty picture on the front page, and you didn't really realize what it was, where it's graphed is also underneath each drink, right? So this is just me trying to help the guests out just a little bit. If they don't know what any of these weird ingredients are, I want them to understand that, right? So that is one aspect of what we're doing with a guest experience. But the guest experience has a lot more to do with the menu, right? Because the guest experience changes so much. We're going to do a bunch of questions at the end, but I think they wanted us to kind of go through this. Say, I see you and I acknowledge you, and you'll be the first one when it goes there.
See that? That's what it's all about.
Hospitality.
You were just acknowledged.
But if you're at a busy bar and he walks up and you've got, 5 tins in front of you and you've got, a thesis worth of chits laying out there, then, you've got to understand that, like, this guy's still thirsty. And all I have to do is say, I acknowledge you. I see you're there. Here's a menu and a glass of water. I can't get to. Give me a few minutes and I will get to you. And he is happy. He's been acknowledged. His needs have been acknowledged. And he is now like, okay, that's cool. I see this guy is crazy busy. He has not stopped working. Now, if the bartender's like, yeah, give me a minute. If that's what you're seeing, yeah, okay, fine. I'm going to be pissed, It's like, but if I'm sitting there building drinks for 10 straight minutes, that's why I haven't been able to get to you. But if I acknowledge that from you right off the bat, right? So our initial interaction, bartenders who are relatively inexperienced never take their eyes off the drink rail, okay? And that's a big issue. You've got to keep your head up. Why are you staring at the ice moving around that fancy Japanese mixing glass? Like, is it really that fascinating? It goes in a circle. Okay, that's it. I mean, it's not really that interesting. So if you're if you're stirring a drink, look up. You don't have to do anything, right? This is when you look up and you see that person put a credit card down. Guess what that means? They need to go. Okay, that means they are ready to go. Maybe they have a dinner reservation. So you can sit there and look and be like, okay, the next thing I do when I'm done stirring this drink is I got to close that out. I got to make sure that the check is up to date. And if I don't have all of those things ready to go, I can signal to my coworker, be like, hey, can you take care of B3? I didn't add their last daiquiri, but other than that, they should be ready to go. Great. He'll add the last daiquiri, present the check, grab the card, and we're good. And you do that because you were looking. Does someone's water need refilling? Does someone look like they're uncomfortable? Is someone bothering that guest? You need to be able to look at these things and kind of figure out what's happening. So when you're stirring, you shouldn't just be stirring and staring at the pretty ice go around. No, you should be looking around and figuring out what you need to do next. What is going to give your guest, what are the next 5 minutes going to look like for you? You got to wipe that down. You got to drop menus. You've got to make another round for these guys. You're plotting ahead. And by doing that, you're also figuring out how far in the weeds you are, right? So that's telling you kind of what state of mind you're going to be in. And it also says, well, if I have 5 things on my plate right now, and my coworker doesn't have that much to do, then I can just pass 2 off. And now with only 3 things on my plate, I feel okay, right? Like 5 is like, oh God, I'm really swamped right now. 3, it's like, I can deal with that, right? So being able to know how you can be best helped is going to help you a lot, because it's going to calm you down and it's going to put you in a better headspace. You're not sitting there thinking about all of the things that you've got to get done. Instead, you're inhabiting that one moment, right? And that is going to allow you to really focus on what's happening. I mean, one of the things that I love so much about having a giant window in my bar is that I know what the weather's like. Working in a dark windowless box is sexy, but man, you just have no idea what's going on in the outside world for about 12 or 14 hours. And I love being able to look outside, because if I see it's like pouring rain, then that means I know there's going to be guests who are coming in who are going to be wearing glasses. And guess what? Their glasses are going to be foggy, they're going to be wet. The first thing you do is you walk up to a guest and you hand them a clean, dry napkin. And you say, oh, here, for your glasses. Like, that's the first thing you should always do, right? Because what else are you going to do? You're going to use your shirt, you're going to use your jacket? It's like, no. No one carries hankies anymore, right? So, I mean, that's not going to happen. So you want to be able to make sure that that guest understands from the very first thing that you're doing. I've walked out to tables to drop that off for guests. And it just, they immediately look at you like, oh, wow, you care. Like, you get it. Okay, and that's the whole thing. Is that the smallest little detail? Yeah, absolutely. But it's such an easy thing to overlook that most people do. Okay, and rather than sit there and watch them with their like steamed up glasses, I want to let that person know that I'm taking every little bit of what they're doing seriously, right? Why do I have regulars? Because I don't give them the exact same experience all of the time. You know, if you come in and it's a first date, all right, you know, maybe you're a little nervous, you know, and I've got to react to that. I've got to sit there and be like, that conversation's kind of stalling out, or they don't look like it's going. Maybe I should bring up that surfing trip he took to Costa Rica over the summer, you know, and like he can get in there, or I can bring up a prompt that I know will like get him into a good joke or a funny, like I'm trying to help this guy get laid, right? Or I'm trying to help her get laid, right? Like that's what we do, right?
Responsibly.
That's why the bars are so dark. We all look better in the dark. That's always the joke. It's like, want to make everyone 20% cuter? It's like, whoop, turn down the lights a little, right? It's like everyone looks better. So that's what we're after, right? So if I know that guest is there. Now, if it's a third date, you're pretty much there for refills. I mean, they are all about each other. Like you don't have to insert yourself into this situation, right? You're looking at this guest.
They got that covered.
Yeah, sometimes almost at the bar. So when you see those things, right, you pull away, right? Because now the focus is not on you. Maybe it's someone who shows up on a first date, you know, a Tinder date or an OkCupid date or whatever. Maybe they're on a first date 3 times a week at your bar every week, okay? Do you ever bring this up? Oh, it's so good to see you again. Never, right? You never want to ever let whoever they're there with know that this is a regular thing. You know, you never want to bring it up. Now, conversely, what if your regulars are a couple? I love this, because when you come in as a couple, it's like, oh, it's fine, you know? Like, you always know how you're going to treat them. But then they come in separately. And then when they come in as a couple again, do you bring up the fact that they came in without the other one? Like, does that person know? Like, did they tell them? Is it awkward? Should they have been out drinking on a Tuesday? So all of those things, like, you don't want to sit there and make anyone feel bad. So you've got to understand, when someone comes in with their boss, you're going to treat them really differently than when they're coming in with, say, their underlings. When they come in with their parents, and I love when people bring parents to my bar, you're going to get a very different experience than when you bring in your college buddies, right? You don't want the same experience. You know, and you should be able to recognize what's happening with a guest and do the right thing for what that experience is what they really need it to be. I think, how are we doing on time? Great, we're good, man. We're doing good?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
So really, again, it's this focus on the guest. It's picking up on these subtle cues that they're going to be putting out there. You know, you've got to be able to read, and it's not just a matter of finding that right recommendation for a drink. Let's face it, the drinks are going to be fine. Like, you probably make tasty drinks at your bar. So it's really much more about creating an environment in which they always feel comfortable. If they only ever want the Temple of Mixology experience, if they only ever get that from you, then they will only ever go to your bar when they want the Temple of Mixology experience. But if they come in and, their friend is like, sorry, I don't really do cocktails, man. I just drink beer. You're like, dude, I love beer. We have 3 really great beers. You should have one. And then the first thing you do is you pour that beer first and you hand it, you're like, thanks for ordering beer at a cocktail bar. You get served first. Like, that's super fast. Like, you want a glass of wine? Dude, that glass of wine is appearing instantly. Champagne's like, dude, right there. It's like, I don't have to crack ice. I don't have to, like, you are getting rewarded. You will be halfway done with your beer by the time I'm done with that old fashioned. Like, life is good. All right? Reward those guests, right? They're making your life easier. And sometimes I get this all the time at the bar. They're like, I'm really sorry. I just want a glass of wine. You're like, are you seriously apologizing to me because you want to give me money for beverage alcohol? Guests have this weird reaction, and it's like, I feel like I'm supposed to have a cocktail. I'm like, no, you're supposed to have a drink. I don't care what it is. I mean, we have a whole thing on our menu of just of mocktails, and they're all named after Phil Ward, who hates mocktails, which is great. My favorite one is just a glass of soda with your choice of bitters. It's Phil Ward hates you. But I mean, if we take this much time and effort into, even putting together a mocktail section, like, I don't care what you're having. I just want you to come in the bar and have a good time. If you want a beer, a glass of wine, you should be able to have that. If you're taking some time off of drinking, if you're pregnant, if you're, whatever. I don't want you to feel bad about having a mocktail, so they come beautifully garnished and they look like all the rest of the cocktails, right? So you can sit there and fake it. That's what I like about going to tiki bars. You can get a non-alcoholic drink and it looks insane, so it looks like all the other drinks, right? We work at bars and we operate bars that have fresh juices and wonderful flavored syrups. If we don't know how to make a delicious non-alcoholic drink without the crutch of booze, you got to start thinking a little more creatively, right? We've got to make sure we're putting that out there for all of the guests. So if there's one person who is not imbibing, that person should be made to feel left out, right? You've got to acknowledge that guest and make sure that they have something really pretty in their hand, that they have something that is aromatic, something that is that took some time and care and has just those same beautiful ingredients. They just happen to not be boozy, okay? So we've got to look at every little facet of what we're doing within that guest experience, and they're going to keep coming back. And that's always, and I say this again and again, they will come back if they're made to feel welcome. If someone feels like, I was lucky to be in that bar, they will come back. They will send guests. They will send guests. If they live in other countries, we get a great international crowd at Pouring Ribbons because we have regulars who are really only there once a year, but they will send their coworkers or they'll send their family to come in. And the first thing is, how did you hear about us? Did someone do it? You guys all know what a boomerang is, right? Boomerangs, when they show up, I've shown up or I've, had a boomerang and I've had staffs who just looked at you like, what a dick. And you're like, really? Like, I'm bringing you free booze from somewhere else. Like, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just the shepherd here. And, it's like the whole point of a boomerang, which for like the 3 of you who may not know what that is, it's when you send another bar staff booze. That's it. And you send it with a guest. Why would you send that with a guest? Well, say they're at Pouring Ribbons, which holds about 100 people, and they're trying to get into PDT or Death and Company, which hold about 40, 50 people. So if I send that guest with a boomerang, that should be a signal to the door guy that this guest should be trusted. This guest is, maybe their industry, maybe they were just really awesome, maybe they were funny, maybe they tip like crazy, like they were allergic to money. For whatever reason, I am choosing to send them to my friend's bar, And so you are trying to signal to them that this is someone who, even if you can't get them in right away, you should prioritize that guest. So our hospitality extends even after you've left the building, and if you can get someone into a bar that they didn't think they could get into and you grease the wheels that way, that's hospitality too. When I went to Tokyo a few years ago, I don't know if any of you have done any drinking in Ginza, but it's just like a ton of faceless office buildings, and some of the best bars in the world are located on the 5th floor, down the 3rd hallway. It's the 97th door on your left. You're never gonna find this place. I was literally a bar back walked us from the bar he worked at to another bar about a 15, 16-minute walk away, just so he could make sure we could get in. and we could find the thing. Like, that's exceptional hospitality, you know? Like, that's really going so far out of your way. It's like, these silly foreigners, they'll never find it. And we wouldn't have. There's no sign. There's no way to know how to get to High Five, you know, or Tender Bar. Like, there's no sign. And so, again, we take these little things, and that's what informs it. Like, I have always treasured my experience at Star Bar for the humility that a guy who had been bartending far longer than I had, the humility and the grace and the service. It was mind-blowing. I had gone to another Japanese bar where I'd had a very different experience. The service was arrogant, and I was profoundly uncomfortable while I was there. And it was really not a pleasurable experience. Also, it was like $200 for about 5 drinks, and that really hurt. And you go to the next bar, and it turns around, and it was just this fantastic service experience. It washed the bad taste out of my mouth immediately. And you had a guy who had been doing this longer than any of my business partners and I had, and he, you know, one of us asked for a Sazerac, and he said, actually, that's not a drink we make in Japan very often. Japanese guests never order this drink. But American guests come in and they order it. Would you show me how to make a Sazerac the way you would in the US? And and he had to do this through a translator. And so the humility that showed, it was like, I want to make you the drink, but I want you to show me how to do it. He was a master bartender. The guy's trained some of the best bartenders in the world, is a renowned authority in his own country. And to, in front of his staff, say that, I thought was extraordinary. You know, we never stop learning. And that's a huge thing. And we should always remember that humility, a little humility goes a really long way whenever we have guests in front of us. And sometimes they acknowledge it and sometimes they don't. But subconsciously, it's always there. All right, I think that's about it for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you, Joaquin. Yeah, I think it just, you know, it speaks to the point about where do we learn hospitality and how do you know, kind of feel that which drives you. And I know that it does come from lots of places. It certainly comes from doing other jobs within our industry. And it's a great opportunity to learn how to get better at our jobs by not doing your job, by doing someone else's job. I think the whole world would be a much happier place if every single person had to be a busboy for 6 months. Because it's a miserable job, and everybody shits on you. And you do it, and you learn, and you watch everything, and you see everything, and you see the best of people, and you see the worst of people, much like we do at the bar, where you see someone wonderful at the beginning of the night and just miserable by the time they walk out of there hammered. You see a lot of different things in this business. But I'll be honest, I learned the building blocks of everything that I practice in hospitality, in addition to learning it, you know, just growing up from my family and how to live life. But I worked at my uncle and grandfather's produce market from the time that I was 12 till I was about 18 and graduated from high school. And the way that they thought about the service of their guests are things that I employ not only in the way that I think about and activate the service that I do on a daily basis, but the way that I teach people to think about the guest, the customer, the person who is coming into you and requesting your service, not just the good or whatever aspect of the thing that you're going to hand to them over a counter, but your service, your hospitality, your goodness. And it's not, again, it's not always easy to do that. Some nights you're having a really, really crappy night, but the ability to do hospitality at the highest level is the ability to put yourself behind that and take your ego away from what it is that you're trying to do and put the ego of your guest first and foremost and service that. And probably the easier part of the equation is to learn how to do that for yourself. The difficult part that many of us face as we rise up you know, throughout this industry is how do you take the things that you know and almost become a part of your DNA and who you are, that become the kind of the living, breathing things that you do on a nightly basis, on a daily basis to make your guests happy, to make a certain guest feel good, just because you know it now. Like Joaquin said, it's not 6 months as a bar back practicing your house-made bitters collection. It's, you know, 6 years in the industry getting shat on and getting fucking owned and doing great and then getting owned again and then sort of trying to figure it out. And now you've got it. How do you pass that on, and how do you create not just you being great at what you do, but a culture and a staff that can follow your lead, that can be that when you can't be there, or when you're not standing in front of that guest? And again, if you've had a chance to go to Williams & Graham, you know that the essence of what happens there is based on a core hospitality. And I guess what Sean is going to take us through is that idea of taking what you know and what you do and spreading it out over a place that you got, or several places that you got. So, Mr. Sean Kenyon.
That was Jon Santer being hospitable with his flask.
He's going to pass it around now.
That's what oh, whoa. So, hospitality. I mean, I think that, now we've spoken about what you do before everybody walks in the door. And we've spoken about what happens once the guest walks in. Those two things, that's the core of what we do. But to make all that happen in the right place, you have to have the right people. And I think that the most important thing, in any staff is the right people. I mean, there is literally, to hire, it's easy in our world for people to be dynamic behind a bar. For them to be, there's a lot of people that are actors. They get behind the bar and, they shine this thing. It's their show every night, but that really that's not the core of what we do. Really what you have to do is you have to find people that are genuine hospitalitarians in a way, Actors are great, Actors can put on a show night after night. Actors have bad nights. Actors don't believe in what they're doing, in a lot of ways. They can act every night as if they are someone else. Those people, they lose it pretty quickly. And the first, when things get rough, people are acting their part as a bartender. I'm acting as a bartender. I don't really truly believe in taking care of people, but I know to make money, this is what I'm saying, I know to make money I have to be this way. What happens to them is it starts to crack at the seams, and the first thing they do is take it out on their peers, and their hospitality still shows all the guests, but they're an asshole to the people to the sides of them, and that's it. We've all worked with that person. Has everybody seen that movie Waiting? Has anybody seen that? The woman who walks in the back, she's huge smiles, big fake smiles on the floor, and she runs in the back and she screams like crazy about how she hates all of her guests. Those aren't the people we want behind our bars. When you're hiring, it's important. You're creating a culture. To give great hospitality, you have to create a culture and a belief structure. It's almost cult-like. You have to hire people that believe in what you're doing, that believe in bartending. And if you go to the next slide, I think that my philosophy has always been is build a family, don't hire a staff, right? You have to build people that can work together, that believe in each other, that believe in what you have to say, what you as a leader, as an owner or a lead bartender, whatever it is, what your philosophy is. Your philosophy is to take care of people every day, to serve people, not drinks. This is paraphrasing what Jim Meehan has to say. And you have to hire people that believe that. I will every day hire the personality and train the skill. I think that's very important. If you're 26 years old to 30 years old, and you don't have a personality already, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. You're not going to develop one.
We're sorry.
Sorry.
You should go.
I mean, but
No one will miss you.
so yeah. I mean, if you're boring, or I hear this, we do interviews all the time, and we're actually opening a new bar, and we're talking to people, and the thing I hate to hear in interviews when you say, why are you in this industry? And the first line is always, I'm a people person. And it's like, if you're
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Good
you.
night.
If you're not a people person, lock yourself in your apartment and fucking wrap yourself in tinfoil to protect from the gamma rays. I don't get that. I'm a people person. If you're not, everybody should be a people person. I mean, or else you're gonna be solitary and live on an island the rest of your life. It makes no sense. Mixology, I think, is important to what we do, but it's a practice. It's not a person. We're all bartenders, and the key is to be a bartender first. And if you teach people that what is a bartender? I mean, what do we do first? We take care of people, and to do that, you naturally have to have empathy, and you have to be able to relate to people, right? And I think that it's a sort of unpopular thought, but if we look about the rise of cocktail culture in the last 10 years, there was a point where there were some very, very self-important bars in a lot of cities, that were trendsetters. They brought the practice of mixology back to bartending, but along the way, it became all about what's in the glass and less about, all about what's in the glass or the person behind the bar and less about the people on the other side, about our guests. While it's almost, it's abhorrent to us in a lot of ways to think about it now, that period in the cocktail culture was extremely important because we wouldn't have the history and the science and all the things that we know now. We wouldn't have that without that supreme focus on the glass. Now, we realize that bartenders for years, since the 1800s, hospitality was the first thing we've known about. My father, who's a bartender, and my grandfather before him, I watched them every day as I was a kid. My father would set up his bar in the morning. He'd get there at 9 a.m. and he would finish setting up at about 10:30. And from 10:30 to 11:30, the 1 hour, he would read 3 newspapers. I mean, different political opinions, different views on sports. There was no USA. It was all local papers because this is the 70s and 80s. That was his link to news. There's no internet at that time. But he would read those newspapers every day, not because he really cared too much personally about what was going on in national politics or what was going on in national sports or anything, but so he could be a great conversationalist, right? So he could talk to his guests every day. That's a selfless point of view. I was at a bar like 3 or 4 years ago and was sitting there just having a drink after work, and a guy came in, he sat down, and I live in Denver, Colorado, and the guy said to the bartender, he's like, "Hey, how did the Avalanche do tonight?" And the bartender looked at him and he said, I don't like sports.
Wrong answer.
Wrong answer. Yeah. I mean, but that one interaction kind of what it does in a microcosm, it just shows how wrong it is. Once we step behind a bar, it no longer becomes about us. It's all about our guests on the other side. So it's an important thing to hire people who can be that. To hire people who don't just want to be a rock star, who don't just want to be, standing on a panel, in front of you guys at Tales, or, their goal is to be in Imbibe or Food and Wine, or, featured nationally in publications and blah, 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 get fame. You want to hire somebody that believes that taking care of the people in front of them, the people in front of them, those are the rock stars, not us. And how do you do that in an interview? Well, it's tough. I mean, first of all, my interview process would never work in corporate culture. I mean, in a hotel or anything, because the first thing I do is, once somebody passes, I read their resume, read all that kind of, the things, and everybody can, most people and some very crafty people can, they can navigate their way through an interview. They can say all the right things. Once we get to that point, they're like, oh, okay, we'll take them out. Then the next time I take them to somewhere, like a coffee shop. Or I take them to, coffee shop's the first step. So I take them to a coffee shop or something. I want to see how they relate to people in service. If they walk up to a counter at a coffee shop, they don't make eye contact. They don't treat the person behind the counter like they're a person. Like they treat them like a vending machine. I don't want that person to work for us. That's not true bartender material to me. Try this exercise in a day. Walk down the street, make eye contact with everybody that walks by you. Talk to the people who are at convenience stores. Talk to the people that you deal with everywhere you go. But make eye contact with them and smile just a little bit. Don't get creepy and like big kind of too much staring.
Hey.
But yeah.
I'll take a latte.
But you see, yeah.
A big one.
But try that for yourself and see what happens and see how people react to you. You smile at them, they smile back at you. You know, it's a natural reaction. If you've ever been in a conversation or standing in a conversation with somebody that you don't know, and if you cross their arms, they're going to cross their arms. If you lean on a table, they're going to lean on a table. It's pretty, just think about those things. You see the mannerisms that you have relate to the person that you're talking to. So when I take the people that I'm interviewing, when I take them out, I first take them to the coffee shop. If that goes by, the next thing we do is we go out for a drink. This is where the HR would not approve. Because my father always told me that, you know, a drunk man's tongue is a sober man's truth. And I don't get them drunk, but, you know, after a drink or two, you know, all the talk shit about their former employees or former employers and the people they worked with and how they feel about cocktails in general and, you know, all that kind of thing, those things kind of come out, you know. Take them in an environment where hospitality is important, you know. I mean, you don't have to feed them a ton of drinks or get them drunk, but, you know, or do bong hits. I mean, I do live in Denver. Yeah. It's legal. It's legal in Denver.
That was cheap. That was a cheap
Yeah,
one,
it's
John.
cheap applause, right? Yeah. Thank you, New Orleans. Good night. Thank you. See, all you got to do, just mention the city. But you know, I think there you get to see the essence of the person. You know, you get to see how they interact with their bartenders, how they interact with the servers, and how a little bit of alcohol, you know, where they go. You know, and you can hide a lot of things without alcohol, and you know, alcohol opens people up a little bit, and you can find the right and the wrong things at that point. So then you hire them, you know, after they've not shit themselves or thrown up all over you, or, you know, whatever happens when you go out for a drink with someone. You know, once they enter my building or our building, you know, it's our responsibility to make them better. You know, I think this happens a lot. When people hire somebody, they take all this time, and they hire a bartender, and then like after 2 days they're like, fuck this guy, he's terrible. But for me, once you've made the effort and committed to hiring somebody, you have to take that all the way to the end. It's a responsibility of an owner, a bar owner, any responsible businessman to do everything they can to make that person better once they've committed to it. To bring somebody on for 2 days and throw them away without it, like because they made 1 or 2 mistakes, is not the right thing, you know. So it's a lot of it about loyalty and trust. I say this a lot, but as a bar owner, and you know, it's something you never think about in bartending, but you know, I've been a bar owner now for almost 4 years. I have gained so much more by trusting than I've lost by betrayal. And think about that. It's very, very, in our industry, if you trust in people, if you don't micromanage them, if you say, okay, I put them in the right place, I hired them, I believe in them, I want them, you know, I believe that they're going to do the right thing, for the most part, it's worked out. The few, I think Jason, my bar manager, Williams and Graham, and I were talking today. We've like fired 3 people in 4 years. 3 people, and yeah, thank you. But and you know, I mean, that betrayal is very small compared to what we've done, you know, and what we've gained. You have to make an environment where people not only they believe in what you do, but they gain benefit. If you go to the next slide. The last since we've opened, we created this program where, funny enough, one of the guys we fired is actually in this photo. Yeah, he's the second from the left. He's right next to me. Yeah. So every year, we take a. Next slide, please.
This is also a nice picture.
So what we do at Williams and Graham every year is that, you know, we create this, we do a trip. And we take anyone on our staff that's been there from January 1st to December 31st of a calendar year. And in March, we take them to a producing region. The first year we went to Scotland. The next year we went to France. And then, which was there. And that was one of the brands, Martell specifically, put us up in this little shack out in Cognac, where they had a guy follow us around all day. That if I said make me a grilled cheese, he would run and make me a grilled cheese. It's really fucking weird. But you know, we visit. It's not only educational, but it's bonding, and it's a loyalty thing. Like if you're loyal to us, we're gonna take care of you every year. And we closed the first 2 years. We closed to go on these trips. You know, last year we had enough people to stay and take care of it. But you know, this past year we went to the Sherry region, which was a blast, and you know, went to 11 bodegas in 4 days. And everybody that stays home and works, they want to work and be on that trip the next year. You know, we take care of the people. You know, we save $250 a week. On the bottom line of a restaurant that's doing, you know, between $1 million and $2 million a year, $250 a week is minimal. But at the end of the year, you have $12,000 to take care of your, you know, we write it off to marketing to take care of our staff. And they look for that, and they believe in it. We invest in them, and in turn, they invest in us. And we've been super lucky in that vein. The biggest thing I think, you know, when you talk about teaching and being there is you have to live it. You know, I can't, if I said all these things, I walked into the room and said all these things and walked out the door and got on a plane and left and never came back, they're not going to do the, you know, they'll be like, oh yeah, that was really cool. You're funny. Go away. But, you know, you have to live it, and you have to be the hardest working person in the room, and you have to be the person that everybody believes in. You know, the people that walk, you know, there's a lot of bar owners that walk behind their bars, and, you know, they come in late, they leave early, you know, you know, they're not the example. You know, it's a do as I say, not as I do thing. You really have to be able to own that, you know. And what bartenders have to deal with every day is, you know, this is the big responsibility, and it's kind of what I'm going to close with at this point, is that we have it in our hands every day, a responsibility that not a lot of people take seriously enough, is that we can ruin somebody's day in a matter of seconds, or we can make their day better in a matter of seconds. Our goal is to make, you know, from when they walk in the door to when they leave, we want them to leave in a better space than when they came. If you think about it, what kind of bartender do you want to be? You know, do you want to be the kind of bartender that corrected a bunch of people and told the guy how to correctly pronounce Lafroig in front of a first date so he looks like an asshole and doesn't get laid? You know, or
Responsibly.
Or do you want to be the guy that facilitated that? You know, we see it all the time. I mean, I like to think that Williams & Graham has an amazing close rate, you know? So if you're in Denver on a Tinder date, come to Williams & Graham, hook it up. You know, but that's because our staff, our family, you know, they believe, you know, because we've created a culture. And they all, at some point, it's not just me, you know, and that's the big goal of it all. Like, it's not me telling them every day how to do it. They hold each other accountable at this point. They all believe in the culture, so they all hold each other accountable to that point. You know, if they feel like somebody's not on, they let them be on. You know, they make them be on. If their breath smells, they tell them. We have a rule behind our bar. It's funny. We have a rule behind our bar. It's like, you know, hand a mint. You know, if one of your other bartenders hands you a mint, fucking take it. Yeah. No. And yeah, if somebody ever offers you a mint, freaking take it. I wish I had a couple mints last night. For some other people. But, you know, I mean, that's the thing is, like, we think about it in that standpoint. Like, we're working next to somebody, it's a microcosm of the culture, though. If I'm working next to somebody whose breath is bad, I don't care. I can walk away. But if they're projecting to a guest on the other side of the bar, and your thought process is like, I don't want that guest to smell your ass breath, then they're going to hand you a mint somewhere.
It's a technical term, people. Sorry.
That's the way. I think if we think about it, you know, we can all, in manuals and things, we can nail service. You know, service we can teach. Service is one of those things that you can hand somebody a manual and say, this is your 7, 8, 10, 12, 11 steps of service. But hospitality, you know, service comes from a manual, hospitality comes from the heart. You know, service has steps, hospitality has soul. And if you think about that, it's all really, your bartender becomes an ingredient in the cocktail and becomes an ingredient in the experience. And you have to believe that and translate it to your guests in a way that, translate it to your staff in a way that they believe in you. You know, you have to live it as a leader. You have to live that part every day. So, you know, it's really, it's my honor really to work with these guys. And this is the 5th time we've done this seminar, and, you know, it grows and it gets better every time. And, you know, when we first talked about this thing, you know, I think there was like 5 people at our first seminar, which is great. You know, it was the best 5-person seminar I've ever done in my life. But, you know, these guys, you know, they live it every day. They're not just up here, you know, dictating and telling you, but, you know, if you've been to their bars, you know, and if you've been at any of our bars, you know, and you'll see when you walk in how all this translates. People can talk about hospitality all the fuck they want. And you know, sorry for the expletive, but I think that it's emphasis. Like, people talk about it all the time. It's a buzzword. You have to think about it. You can't just hire nice people and put them in place. You have to give them a belief system. You have to set them up with tools for success, and you have to lead by example. Those things are really important. As bartenders, our onus is to absorb negativity and radiate positivity. And I think that if we all think about that every day, and we take all that energy, that negative energy that we absorb, and we get rid of it in good ways for ourselves and take care of ourselves, then we're healthy enough and we're smart enough to be able to take care of our guests every day. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. All right, so we got a couple minutes for questions, and I think we have a microphone. Does anyone have questions? I think gray shirt might be first, according to Joaquin Simo. I can't see what that says, so.
It says 5 minutes.
5 minutes to go. Oh, it's over there too, apparently. I guess I'll walk down. Am I walking? Who's got a question?
Joaquin, a while ago, you showed up your you showed your menu. I wanted to ask, actually, for everyone, you have more than 100 people per your on your bar. How do you introduce to them cocktails, or how do you make them feel more acclimated into ordering that? I see your descriptions, and do you change that up every once in a while? Your 4 descriptions from spiritus to adventurous, or sorry, for comforting to adventurous and that sort.
For the most part, I mean, the matrix has remained unchanged since we opened 2.5 years ago. So for the most part, the reason we chose spiritus to refreshing and comforting to adventurous is more or less those are the 3.5 questions that we would ask a guest anyway, right? Like, what base spirit is your preference? You know, do you want something refreshing, or do you want something boozy? Do you want stuff you're familiar with? Do you want to try something new? You know, are there any deal breaker ingredients, stuff you really don't like? You know, so basically we thought about those are the basic questions that we would ask a guest to winnow down, kind of, because once they answer any of those questions, you're basically losing like quadrants of that menu. So it's basically how we would narrow it down in our mind anyway. It's a very natural conversation with a guest. So the matrix on there was basically just a way to visually display more or less what that conversation should be, and maybe take a couple of those steps out, especially for people who are at a table. And really that was the whole point of that menu, was to kind of allow people to not look at 30 drinks, but maybe have to pick between 3. Right, because they already narrowed it down themselves. So even if they still have questions to ask, those questions start to be a lot more specific. They're only asking about a few drinks that are already like each other, rather than, you know, a boozy, rich, Amaro-driven drink, a Tom Collins variation, and a tiki drink. It's like, well, you want one of those. You probably don't want all of those at a given moment. So by mapping it out on the menu, it tends to focus things a little bit more for the guests, and they're able to figure out especially what they don't want.
In 8 years of Tales, this is the first seminar I've been to where people talked about being in the bar business as opposed to being in the cocktail business. It's refreshing, and not only refreshing, it's reassuring that what I've been doing for the last 40 years is the right stuff. Do you guys consider yourselves bar owners that serve cocktails or lounge owners that are sometimes bars?
I'm a bartender. I've been a bartender my whole life.
Yeah, I'm a bartender that owns a bar. I mean, I still bartend. I can't. My father told me years ago, and he was more talking about not being roped into being a floor manager. Sorry, floor managers. He always said, always keep 1 foot behind the bar. And I think that's because he was speaking of relevance, and he was, I think now there's brand ambassador positions and things that we have a lot of opportunity to do in our careers now that are open for us. But I think to stay relevant in bartending, I think you have to keep that connection to the bar itself, So yeah, I'm a bartender that owns a bar for sure.
Yeah, that's same.
How's everyone doing? Pretty good? Yep. Awake? Cool. My name is Marco, and my question was, what's more important, the smile or the acknowledgement of an individual when they walk into a friendly place?
Yeah, it's smile and acknowledgement at the same time. Mutually exclusive. Yeah, not mutually exclusive. But I think, God, this microphone's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I think that... I think that the acknowledgement, any acknowledgement is really important, and any deft bartender working at a very busy bar knows how to make their guests feel like they're next, or they know that they're being taken care of. But it doesn't have to be a gigantic creepy smile, but it's just a little bit of a smile with your nod. A nod goes a long way. The finger or those things are terrible. Don't ever do this. This makes you're 1 or 2 or 3 in line. Yeah.
Can I speak to that for a second? I thought about this a lot, and it's actually part of the seminar that I forgot to talk about. The bar at Prize is extremely busy. It's not a place where we even have table service. We don't have that, so we're doing kind of an elevated program extremely quickly. So, and I really feel this way. As long as people are acknowledged in any way, and hopefully the best way possible, but just acknowledge them, and then they relax. You just have to acknowledge them. You can tell them, I'll be with you in 25 minutes. And they're like, great, I'll just check my email and I'll do the thing. They just want to know their place in line. That's it. Then you can just,
I have a question. I'm from Malibu, California. I deal with a very high volume bar. As far as motivating staff, the majority of our staff is transient, whether they want to be in whatever industry other than being a bartender. That's their normal day-to-day means of survival. How do I challenge my staff who are transient in order to understand the fundamentals of hospitality and service?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, bartending has been a transient community forever. And I think your challenge and my challenge to anybody, I've dealt with places that have transients, is be the best bartender you can be every day. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter. With the transient crowd, I think you have to challenge them to be, what's that?
The transient crowd.
Transient crowd, yeah.
Sean knows a lot about the transient crowd, so listen up.
Okay, I do know a lot about the transient
That's
crowd.
life under the highway overpass, kids.
Well, but I think when there's bartenders that go from place to place to place, and you might have them on your staff, I think you want to challenge them personally to be the best bartender they can be, rather than, because a lot of times those people aren't about the establishment, right? So I think that's, for me, that's how I've approached that particular challenge.
I think to the point we've talked about a lot, it's the ideas of hospitality are ideas that translate really to everywhere. And to a certain degree, if you took them all the way back, a lot of them are based on common sense and common decency. So you can translate those skills to anything, whether it's another bar, another industry, or just not being a dick every day. So I think that there is something that you can, there's perceived value in being, like you said, whatever it is we're gonna do, let's be great at it. It's not easy, but the idea of being great at hospitality or making great drinks or putting all those things together in a format that is, again, maybe it is just high volume. Again, to most of the bartending I've done in my life has been high volume. And it doesn't mean that the hospitality goes out the window. It means that it has to be done in different ways, much more subtle and obviously much faster ways. And then building a kind of a depth behind that is something that you can absolutely utilize across skills. All right, we're running out of time. We're gonna do two more quick, one in the back and then one up here real quick.
Yeah, I work for a 400-seat upscale restaurant on Bourbon Street, and I've got a whole bunch of 20-something-year-old kids that I want to knock the shit out of because they don't understand what you had mentioned before, the difference in service points and hospitality. Is there a tactful way to tell these children what you're doing? I mean, I've been doing it since I was 18, and that's been a couple years ago. So,
I've wanted to knock the shit out of a few people too, but I mean, obviously can't do that. I think the best thing is that, for yourself, if you're going to take the step to be a leader, is to do all those things, and to do all the things that you want everybody else to do. And then if you're in a position to advance them, set up a system that's a merit-based system rather than a seniority-based system. That's what I hate about unions for the most part, is that everything union-wise or corporate-wise is how long you've been there, not how well you execute every day. But if you, in your own independent restaurant, can set up a system that the people who execute very well every day, or people who do their jobs well, those are the people to advance. It's the 80-20 rule. Like if it's a seniority-based system, 80% of the people are upset because the 20% that have been there longer than them or whatever are doing well while they're working their asses off. The other way around, in a merit-based system, your 80% of people are happy because they're working hard. The 20% who've been there a long time and not trying, those are the ones that are pissed off, and it's okay if they leave. So I think in that case, you just have to reward. You have to reward by merit and not by seniority, and you have to own it yourself as a leader. And even if you're just a team member, and you're working with a bunch of people, you worry about what you're doing on your own, and hopefully that inspires the people around you. I think it's the way to go with that.
The only other thing I would add to that is send those staff members to bars and bartenders who you believe are doing things the right way, and let them experience it. Let them have that experience from the guest perspective and see if that doesn't inform how they then want to treat their own guests. If they have a really phenomenal service experience, if they do that, it should make a lasting impact on them. And I think that's an easy way to just be like, see how good that felt? Why aren't you doing that for all of our guests? And I think you can easily take them to any one of the number of amazing bars and bartenders that are around this city, and they could have that experience. And I think it would do so much for them to go back to work after having had, Kirk Estopinal or Ricky Gomez or one of these guys, make you feel like a rock star. I think that would be an enormous help.
Hi guys, Adam here. Thanks a lot for today. It's been very insightful. Quick question. So I work in Singapore, and talking about picking the right people and things like that, the challenge that we have is that we have a lot of technical people that are fantastic at the mixology part, but don't have the chat. And it's not a cultural thing. It's like can't engage. We don't have the luxury of selecting the people either. What can we do? What's some ideas to help us bridge that gap within their own friends group? It's amazing. Like they got the chat, they got the personalities. With us, once we build the relationship, they've got it. But with the customers, it's that divide, the power divide. It's challenging. And any thoughts?
Put them in the service well.
the service well. Yep.
I would say, to me, the biggest answer to that question is help them understand the value of why they need to do it. It's really easy to see the answer to that question when you're in your friend setting or when you're with your boss. But I guess understanding, I think probably the most difficult part of flipping that idea of hospitality to the guest, especially if there's a perceived formalness to the interaction that exists between between server and guest, that it's important to understand that hospitality is the same way you'd want to have a great conversation with your friend or your mom or somebody that you need to respect in the business model. It is ultimately, I think there are a lot of people who are in hospitality who don't see what the end goal is to hospitality. To a point that we've covered in a couple of different ways, the end goal isn't to get them perfectly, perfectly folded napkins or the right plate or make sure that every garnish is on the right place. Yes, all of those things should be perfect, but the goal is to make somebody feel great. To turn a bad day into a better day, to turn a good day into the best day ever. And if you have an opportunity to accomplish that is ultimately what we're trying to achieve. So I think setting that as a goal and helping a staff to understand that is where it all starts and hopefully where it all ends, maybe you can get them to transition from, yes, they're great with their friends, yes, I can have an awesome conversation with them, but it's just not making it to that final step. Almost giving them the permission to let go and be not informal, like sit down next to them while you're taking your order, friendly, because I really hate that. But friendly to the point where it's comfortable and accessible and fun. And bringing that aspect to it, and again, in different ways, sometimes very formal, sometimes less so, but understanding that that's the end goal of what we're trying to do and giving them permission to do that in whatever way makes sense. Anyone else? All right, well, we definitely need to wrap up, but we can't wrap up without giving a huge thank you to our amazing team members here. So Joaquin, Sean, Jon. And I'll close by saying the great thing about hospitality is it's the one thing we can control. You can't control when the AC is going to blow out. You can't control when 40 people are going to get sad at the same time and you're totally buried. You can't control a lot of things in this stupid business that we've all chosen for no good reason because we're screwed now. But you can control how you deal with those moments and how you deal with your people. And at the end of the day, you could have no AC, I can't serve you food, but God damn it, I've got this beer. It's the coldest one I have. Please accept my apologies. I'm so happy you're here. And at the end of the day, that guest will remember that experience way more than they'll remember, the perfect thing with no soul. So give them the hospitality, give them the love, let it be from here. Don't fake it. You'll weed yourself out eventually if you're trying to, and that's fine. This business isn't for everybody. But if you can provide that from the heart, from the soul aspect and connection, you've done something unique and something really, really amazing, and something we can all be proud of. It's the most honorable thing that any of us can do to anyone. So to have chosen it and to be executing it as a service model and as a profession is something all of us can take great pride in and strive for. So thank you for your interest in this topic, and have a wonderful night.